So let us start with the generic psychotherapy process and the steps included in it. And once we are through with it, we can go with the case. So it's a 7-step process. Step 1 is to take case history, which is very alike in homeopathy or psychiatry or many other areas. Practically the same. Only thing is the type of information we need is slightly different from the type of information is required in psychiatry or homeopathy. But the case history includes the origin, development, and progress. It includes time when there was no symptom. It includes history of past illness. It includes the early childhood, adulthood, youth, and so on. So the first is case history taking. Second step is if the case history tells us that certain things are not clear, or we need a confirmation, or something is clear but the intensity is not clear, then we go for psychological testing. So step 2 is psychological testing. Step 3 is diagnosis. And the diagnosis today, what we do is DSM diagnosis. We can alternately do a diagnosis in psychoanalytic terms also, but by and large we do a DSM diagnosis. Step 4 is where the real thing starts, which is pathogenesis. That we have the case history of the person and we have the complaint. So the problem, the disorder is arising out of a life story. So the case history gives us the life story, which is centering around the disorder, and we have to find out how the disorder emerges from that life story. So what we do is we put the case history into the machine of a psychoanalytical analysis. So if we put that case history into a Freudian machine, the output will be a Freudian pathogenesis. If we put the case history into a Kleinian machine, the output will be a Kleinian pathogenesis. Based upon which school as an analytic machine we use and put our raw material, the case history into, correspondingly we get a pathogenesis. Then we come to a holistic healing plan, that if this is the pathogenesis, how to heal it. And in that holistic healing plan, we can go for medication, for therapy, for yoga, for Reiki, for pranic healing, whatever we feel we are trying to do. And then one important part of it where we are involved is therapy. And there the question comes how to do therapy, which we call technique, which we'll do later. And then we have supervision, that occasionally every therapist should take his sessions, 1 or 2 sessions of any particular case for supervision. Or he can do self-supervision, or he can do peer supervision, that people of similar school or different schools can get together and do peer supervision for each other. So if you go for professional supervision, it may be costly, but if you don't want to incur the cost, then you can occasionally go for it, and on a weekly or a monthly basis have a peer supervision where people come together online or offline and one case is presented and everyone tries to analyze it. It's a very good way of refining the way we look at a case, peer supervision. So this is the generic process, and what we'll focus upon is pathogenesis, because this is where application of school of psychoanalysis comes in, and therapy, how to do therapy. So we'll be focusing on 4 and 6 initially, and then slowly we'll go to 5. In 5, I just want to show something. We won't go into details. I just want to show something. So this is the details of 3. If you look at, 4, pathogenesis. So this is the detail of 4. How you do step-by-step pathogenesis. And this is for those interested in holistic healing, that we can look at the human integer who is constituted of different parts, and we have different kind of uh, healing approaches to address to each of the different parts of the human integer, and this can be one way of integrating different modes of healing. For example, for the physical body, we have allopathy, Ayurveda, yoga, martial arts, body work. For the energy body, people talk about Reiki, pranic healing, acupressure, yoga, Tai Chi, Kriya Yoga. So here you have all the healing modalities. And what one can do is one can look at the person, and based upon the pathogenesis, if you do pathogenesis in these holistic terms, then you can prescribe a holistic healing package here. We'll go in details when we come to it, but I just wanted to share it with you. So today we are focused upon point one, the case history, and just the case analysis of this case history.
So
So,
forgive me, please give me the acronym expanded. Heat,
Acha, okay,
heat.
okay. Sorry. Uh, this is a system that I have developed, and it stands for Holistic Elemental Analysis and Therapy. So what I
You
have
had given us, but I forgot. Sorry.
Ah. So what I've tried to do is to integrate different schools of the West, and then to integrate East and West, and on top of it put some original ideas, and the whole package have designated as heat. Fine. So with this small introduction, let us start with Bhavna's case. Yeah, Bhavna, over to you.
Thank you, sir. Good noon once again, everyone.
Thank
Uh,
you.
so, this is a case of a man aged around 38 years who had trouble from last 3 years. That is, the onset was at age 35, where he was watching a television cricket match. And during the match, only he had his first episode of a kind of physical tremors, and he was really afraid of the body shaking and moving. Prior they thought that it is um, kind of epilepsy or something, but he was very much in his senses, and they further went for checkups with neurologists and psychiatrists, and there was nothing being shown on his reports as seizure or something. EEG, everything was normal, and they started concluding it and diagnosing it as a conversion disorder. There was on and off episodes of aphonia where he would lose his speech for a period of 2 to 3 weeks and then again regain. Then these tremors, somebody instilled an idea into him that maybe this is some kind of Parkinson's, to which he felt, yes, this is Parkinson's, and he wanted to, he went all over India for checkups so that somebody can say it is Parkinson's and not a psychological issue. So when he came to the sessions, he was almost convinced that it is Parkinson's, because just one of the scans showed that there is a possibility of Parkinson's. So he was ready to undergo some surgery also for it. I don't know, I think it was gamma knife surgery or something like that. Somebody had recommended. But family and the local psychiatrist, they insisted upon going for psychological sessions. The first observation made was that there was totally non acceptance of having any psychological issue. Second point was the tremors would slow down or even subside when he was being asked to do deep breath work. When his system used to feel little bit calmer, the tremors would stop for a couple of seconds and again reoccur with more of intensity, as if they wanted to prove themselves that it is not a psychological thing. That was creating a lot of distress in his relationships, in his workplace. He, being from business community, felt that people are mocking about him, and at this age he would become, kind of a inefficient person. So there was a lot of added on stress to his system. He comes from a very middle class setup. He lived in a joint venture, that is to do his elder brother, his mother, his father. Father had died post his issue started. He was very much attached to his mother right from the beginning, but the elder brother was more like an father figure, an authoritative figure who would scold him very often right from the childhood. And his wife and two children, they were twins. Wife also reported that of lately, there was a time period when they got married. He had something like erectile dysfunction, and they had to go for IVF. And eventually, IVF didn't work for them, and then she conceived. That is how they had twins. But sexually, also, he's not very much active or very much into it. So that was the chief complaint, even added by the wife. While the man was not comfortable, she sharing this part. Right from the childhood, this man was very shy. His mother used to cross dress him till age 8 to 9 years of age because she wanted to have a daughter, and elder one was a son, and this being the second born, she would happily dress him, cross dress him with frocks and bindis and everything. This man was very well spoken, well educated, a gentleman in his mannerisms and everything, but he was totally not into any belief of having any psychological issue. Rather, he had been to, during his medical shopping, he has been to occult practitioners also, to figure out, because he had some superstitions like that there is a probability that someone has done something to him. Otherwise, how all of a sudden from nowhere while watching a cricket match, that too it was not a very uh, crucial match or very crucial timing going on in the match where he would have felt the stress. So along with that, he had always been very shy and introverted. He had issues like he felt that he's not enough. Right from his childhood, he felt that his brother is much more capable, and brother was very dominating right from the childhood. But mother would pamper him a lot, while the mother herself would be dominated by the brother. He had this constant fear of what if the brother and mother abandons him, which never occurred while the wife wanted to get separated from the family. But he was like, this is my biggest fear, I cannot do this. Along with all these things, he also uh, showed his file. There were almost 40 to 50 files comprised into one this big pile of uh, medical interventions being done. He had been put on some medication also meanwhile by psychiatrists, but nothing was helping. It was just increasing his tremors day after day. So he was not convinced with any of psychological things. It was, he had also been to Nimhans and Jips for treatment, but there also not much of relief was attained. So he had given up all the hopes. As a student, he was always afraid of some teachers during his school times, though he was never ever punished. But once he was punished in group, which was very humiliating for him, and he ever since then he has been very particular that it should not be him because of which some issue has come up in school. So very perfect in his work, but still he would always feel that he finds very difficult to oppose people or take a stand for oneself. He would feel that he's not good enough to, or strong enough to take up any stand of his own, though intellectually he had all the capability to understand. Also, along with that, there was this uh, on and off too scientific or too irrational superstitious beliefs. They were very contrasting in nature. On one go, he would talk about all the scans he would go for, all the research work which he has done to figure out what is wrong with him, and picking up all the possible neurological aspects of it in depth. On the other hand, he would talk about all the superstitions and what if I go to Mataji and get things done. In between, in the beginning sessions, he was recommended to go for the occult practice just to check his faith because he had lost faith in God. He felt that he's being punished. So when he had been there, he regained his speech, but the tremors continued. And very strangely, while he was recovering even from the tremors, there was one very difficult day for him. There was some hearing in the court for which he wasn't prepared much. A week prior, again, aphonia started setting in and he lost his speech. But the day when he was supposed to be appearing in the courtroom, he spoke very clearly. And he there was this kind of a magical thinking where he felt that some the therapist or some superpower has helped him out, otherwise it was impossible for him to speak up. After 9 to 10 months of therapy exclusively in Kleinian and Rogerian style, there was a lot of relief, and now he's much more confident, capable. The tremors are still there, but they're just 10%. He's functional, he's able to walk, he's talking, and he's much at peace. But the sessions were at least 4 to 5 days a week for 9 to 10 months. So you're on mute.
4 to 5 days a week.
Rogerian, Kleinian, Freud was way too much for the person to take.
Right.
How do we decide that, ma'am, that Freud was too much for him to take?
Uh, Whenever there was this Freudian couch system, he would start disappearing that no, I don't want to be part of therapy, I don't believe it. It was way too much for his unconscious to bear, the silence or the interpretations. And there was this intuition where I felt there is a lot of holding required, where the Freudian way was way too harsh for the psyche. So I switched to Kleinian and Rogerian concepts.
And can I ask, yes, please?
Yeah, please go ahead.
I would like to know about his sexual fantasies and the dreams that he has, and uh, what were his educational and professional background. Perhaps you were told that and I did not note it down. But dreams and fantasies, sexual fantasies in particular, would be.
Um, he was not comfortable disclosing that at all. That would increase his tremors. But towards when he was recovering, he said that now I'm very happy with my sexual life. There was some expectation of some underlying bisexuality, which we never brought again because every time anything, slightest hint also towards that side would create a lot of tremors in his system. Uh, Coming to dreams aspect, he would mostly talk about having dreams of distress where he's not able to, speak up in public. He's not able to stand in public, or he's peeing in his pants. Those kind of dreams he would share, but not very often.
Thank you. So reinforcing his I am not enough kind of belief.
Also, when you asked about the education, he was BCom, and he was from business background.
So step one is complete. She has given us the case history. Now we go to step two. Do we need any psychological testing? And we have to bear in mind that psychological testing means cost. And also the fact that because of the Mental Health Act, unless you are an RCI, you cannot sign any psychological test result, which means you have to send him to somebody with an RCI. And that creates two problems. One is the problem of cost, and second is the problem of capability. Because many people have RCI, but they are not capable. In fact, there is a joke going around that either you have RCI or you have knowledge, you can't have both. So, not to take it literally to the extreme, but the point is that there is a cost involved, there is time involved. So, this is one. So, let us just spend 5 minutes on this. If at all we were to do psychological testing, what would be our area of focus? Like, what would pick up for testing?
Projective tests would be very impactful here.
Correct. Correct.
Rorschach or
Sir, TAT will reveal his relationship with his mother and the dynamics with, yeah,
Correct.
yeah.
So, if wishes were horses and if we could do everything, then three tests we can look at. One is the TAT, one is the Rusha, second is the TAT, and the third is sexual orientation, and the fourth would be general personality disorder instrument of some kind. So this would be ideal, but usually we don't have that luxury. So without testing, we have to go on with our judgment, and we have to try to explore in the first few sessions instead of the test. So we find out through our sessions and through analysis of dreams what the test is going to reveal to us in a couple of sessions. So that is the more practical way all of us go. So step 2. Now step 3 is diagnosis. So DSM wise, uh, what is the diagnosis we can put upon this person? What is he suffering from according to DSM-5? I think Dr. Paralikar would be the best here.
I would have no doubt no hesitation in giving multiple diagnoses because he has conversion dissociative symptoms. He has gender identity issues which may be subsurface. He has dependent, anxious personality. But there are certain caveats which also have some therapeutic utility that when the time comes to challenge, then he often rises right to the challenge. It may be begetting the twins when the IVF did not work and going to the court of law and speaking clearly. That is another. So he should have belief in himself, and if we could bolster something, then that should be good. Affirmations, as you call it. I'm far away from RCI and all, but whatever. This is what I would think in terms of diagnosis. And IPD, PDI, something like that, personality disorder inventory is now available in DSM-5 TR, the screen at least,
Yeah.
so that we could come to a tentative conclusion.
Yeah.
CCSM could be another for generating cross-cutting symptom measure, adult version type 2, something like that. That could be good.
Correct.
Or symptom checklist will be useful to show him that which domains does he have the symptoms from, that they are from somatization, anxiety, paranoia, I'm not sure, dissociation, and yeah, that's, I believe that should be it. There is no apparent organicity that should be relieving his response to when we tell him that he doesn't have Parkinsonian features. How is his response? That should be a good finding. If he responds with relief, then we will take it more in anxiety spectrum. And if he feels that no, you are perhaps not right, you have not done that investigation, I would take him toward hypochondriacal side and keep that in mind.
There's a very interesting point on this. Um, he does not mind hypochondria so long as it is biological. Meaning, he is more afraid of social shame than the biological diagnosis. So it's a very interesting part that for him, shame is far more troubling than a biological diagnosis of something very difficult. So we get one insight into his personality, that the shame is very important for the person.
Him to cross dressing from until 8 or 9, 7 or 8 years of
Correct.
age.
Correct. Viral, would you like to take a stab at it? Is Viral there? Okay. Madhusudan, would you like to take something on this in diagnosis?
Yeah, just 1 second, Sam. Sorry, I'm having equipment trouble.
Okay, कोई बात नहीं.
I'll just yeah. So, but my what I say will be completely based on theoretical understanding.
कोई बात नहीं. Please go ahead.
So, these are the things that you all would already know and don't even need to say, but I would feel need to say, talk about that. There is a conversion and there is a repression. There is a sense of so. For example, it reminds me of particular instances in history where people who had stutters, they lost their stutter in particular situations.
Right.
So the anxiety, so what is the anxiety that is being relieved when he's performing as against a general social interaction? So in the court, it's a performance, and there he is getting his voice back. But when he's talking to other people, he's losing his voice. So when he's when he's positioning himself in a place where he can impress the crowd,
Hmm.
then he can hide perhaps his own alternative sexual orientation. So that's just my view. I'm just yeah.
So let us go back to the age-old way of looking at diagnosis,
Yes.
the episodic and the personality disorders. I think that point in DSM-4 was really good. That we can have a list of episodic problems, and then we can have a list of long-serving personality disorders, subterranean. So in the episodic parts or on and off parts or even chronic parts, what is above the surface? So does he feel anxious by and large? If yes, then we can look at generalized anxiety disorder. He can't speak in front of certain audiences, so we can look at selective mutism. He feels very uneasy in front of a crowd, so we can look at social anxiety disorder. He finds it difficult in sexuality, so we can look at erectile dysfunction. He feels the convulsions or the trembling, so we can look at conversion disorder. He has some strange ideas about the occult, but we leave it there as an overrated ideas. We take it no further. And then we come to the personality disorder dynamics. So we see here dependence, which is very clear. Whether we can put paranoid or not, it depends. Is he generally fearful of most of the things always? No, there is no paranoid ideation. So dependent we put, And second, which will not be able to put in DSM, but will be able to put in psychoanalysis, will be narcissism of a particular type. It won't be DSM qualifying narcissism. Right? So we will put fragile narcissism, psychoanalytically speaking. So in DSM, we'll put those episodic parts, and we will put a personality disorder of the dependent type. So the DSM part closes there. Have we left out anything, Bhavna?
Mostly covered.
Then in psychoanalytic thing, we put fragile narcissism. That which provides him the strength to really rise to the occasion, forget all his difficulties, and perform as though he is actually a good performer, a good leader. So he is like one of those who perform best under critical situations. And there are some who crumble under critical situations. So he's one of those. There is a healthy part of him which overcomes the unhealthy part of him when there is a crisis of survival or a deep crisis of some kind. Yeah.
Uh, this performance thing happened after long term therapy. Earlier, it wasn't there.
Correct. So this gives us a very good point that we have created healthy narcissism. The good work that you have done has actually created a healthy narcissism, although it is fragile, but still it is there. So this is one part of it. Now, let us go to the psychoanalytic analysis of it. Pathogenesis. Okay, why all these diagnostic labels that we have put upon him, how have they come to exist in this person? What are the psychoanalytic explanations for each of these things that we are looking at? The first thing we are looking at is the tremors, which is just obvious. I mean, there is a heightened psychomotor activity. The tremors are always there. The anxiety is continuously being released in some way. Because you can have tremors from both anxiety and anger. But here we are looking at anxiety because I don't think he has shown that clenching of teeth or clenching of hands and legs, the anger-led shivering. It's a very anxiety-led shivering. So if the shivering is because of anxiety and not anger, then let us look at what can be generating that anxiety, which means there is a powerhouse of anxiety continuously on. There is some phenomena continuously active, and the outcome of this phenomena is continuously anxiety which is coming up and discharging itself in that fidgeting part of that person. So what can be the sources of anxiety? We can take two approaches here. One is we can take a generic approach. Okay, what does any man fear? So we have four generic fears: fear of death, fear of pain, fear of attack, and fear of loss. Very generic approach to any human fear. So is or are one or more of them active?
Fear of attack and fear of loss.
Correct. The case history tells us that he is terrified of abandonment. So fear of loss is there. Fear of attack, he was constantly under the fear of the brother. So both of them are there. How about the fear of death and pain? They will be very subterranean and very difficult to own up. We'll come.
Because many times he had even talked about rather having these tremors is better to die, but uh, there was a lot of he used to sweat a lot when he used to talk about when he thinks of committing suicide or something, which was not just the obviousness of a thought of a death, but there was a lot of psychological aspects to it, because the tremors would just go on increasing when he would talk about it. It along with the anxiety, there was a lot of change in his complexion. He would go pale, his mouth would start drying up, and then at times he used to cry also. But then later on, things changed. So there was a lot of fear of death from being attacked, or even it had the root of, what if I'm being attacked, then I'll die. What if I lose everyone, then I'll die. So eventually, no matter what, I will die. And to bear all this is also equivalent to dying.
Correct. And here we come across, sorry, yes,
I find positive points also in this because he continued the treatment over 8 or 10 months, 4 to 5 days a week, and the kind of transference that he might have formed should tell us more about perhaps he got the mother figure that was not putting him through cross-gender, gender identity confusion. There was no father is not mentioned in the treatment. Apart from that, he's dead years ago. So all this, and the brother is domineering. So
correct.
it is not the same as father, the Oedipal feelings against father, but it is the competitive and Oedipal feelings against the brother, which is a huge challenge.
It's sibling and Oedipal together,
Yeah.
sibling rivalry and the sort of Oedipal rivalry, let us put it this way.
Yes.
But
Rather, the transference was more of all good father on the therapist.
Oh. Mhm.
so which means he has been searching the absent father
Mhm.
and he found it in you
Mhm.
to evoke and allow his masculinity to come up, because there has been no paternal element that can help him to nurture his masculinity, because the mother was feminine, she tried to feminize him, and the brother was extremely castrating. So that encouraging, mentoring paternal figure who can allow him to own up and develop his masculinity, that he found in you very strangely.
This kind of disregarding the real gender of the therapist is also, it also speaks about his own ambivalent bisexuality.
Correct. But Bhavna has been doing very well, and I always tell Bhavna ki, naturally speaking, you are far better healer than me. Cut out for this thing. So
No, sir.
people find her very healing and very safe, extremely open. Some people may find me judgmental even in silence. They may feel me dominating even in silence, but they won't find that thing with Bhavna. So I always tell her, you are naturally cut out for this healing. So very good part of holding him. 4 to 5 sessions, 10 months is not easy to hold. It's difficult. So so let us go into one by one the difficulties and then draw a complete line of pathological development. So let us see in a disjointed way what we can see one by one and then put them in some order so we can have a complete story, a coherent story of development of pathology in psychoanalytic terms. So let us go element by element first. We first cut the vegetables and then we make the bhaji pav. So we cut the elementals first. So let us go into elementals one by one. The first elemental is of trembling. It reminds me of a very famous book by Soren Kierkegaard. Soren Kierkegaard used to write on this kind of strange topics, and there is a book by the title Trembling and Fear. And there is a second book, Either or. And there is a third book, Sickness Unto Death. So we'll not go into Kierkegaard today, but coming back to our anxiety, um, anxiety. So the question for us is, the trembling is because of anxiety, not because of anger. And this anxiety is coming from something. So what is that something? So the first we said was there can be a generic approach to the source of causality of this anxiety, the four fears, and then the psychoanalytic phenomena. First is Oedipus. Is there an anxiety of Oedipus? Is Oedipus also a source? The answer is yes, because we see that in erectile dysfunction also. We'll come to erectile dysfunction separately also, but for the moment, just mention it. The second part is, are we looking at pre-Oedipal pathology also? So we are definitely looking at pre-Oedipal pathology in the form of early life attachment problem. This is where the fear of abandonment comes up and the creation of dependence comes up. And we are not seeing creation of pure dependence. I'm not referring to DSM within the psychoanalytic discussion. We are not seeing creation of pure dependence. We are seeing creation of a mixed personality disorder of dependence with some degree of narcissism. Very fragile. Why so? Because we see that reflected in the fear of shame.
What about histrionicity?
You will have to give us some more data. How does he dress? How does he behave? And when he is in front of you, do you feel that histrionic feeling? Right? One of the, just as in psychosis, we say you have that precox feeling. In histrionicity, we have the seductive feeling.
Yes.
So, can you tell something more about it?
The change in the way he would look and speak, while if his wife or his brother is accompanying and they're speaking, the expressions would be different. But when he would be given all the spotlight to speak, the change in his body language, as if to impress, uh, the mannerism, the code of conduct, way too perfect and clean. um Dressing up, yeah, he would smell heavily of his perfumes, and though
So,
not a very great looking person, as in he had his paunch and bald hair, but very presentable in a way to impress others.
so here we'll have a point of differentiating narcissism from histrionicity. Because a narcissist also will like to impress. He will like to put on costliest of perfumes. He will always be in that race. I have and you don't have. I know and you don't know. He can't get out of that race. So the narcissist also will do this. The differentiating factor will be the dramatic element.
So, isn't the pathology itself a presentation of or somatization of histrionicity, which is not being able to live out due to the fragility of narcissism?
Uh, there can be, provided we had some strange symptoms. Let us say we had some strange symptoms where we had some sort of erotic element or attention seeking element embedded into it. Let us say if we are talking about conversion, hysterical conversions, then yes. If it's only shivering, then probably no. But if there are full body hysterical convulsions, where in that convulsive episode, we do see some gyrating movements or some dramatic movements and some seductive movements, then yes, even though it will be a conversion disorder, but psychoanalytically speaking, in the inner world, you can talk about histrionicity.
Mm.
You can just talk about histrionicity somatized.
It was very much evident in his tremors.
Then we are looking at histrionicity also. That in DSM we will talk only about conversion, and we won't be able to qualify for histrionicity, but psychoanalytically we will say there is histrionicity and the somatization is happening in the particular conversion that we are looking at. So that will take us into the nature of the conversion. What is the nature of the conversion? Is it free from all personality disorders, or are some personality disorders connected to that conversion? And we see a connect here, that a very mild form of somatized histrionicity will be there. But you are the best judge if you feel the dramatic and the seductive element in his presence, apart from the movements. So that,
Also, the tremors subsided when the fragile narcissist and the histrionicity was given the right thawing temperature where it could just live out itself. The tremors reduced remarkably.
correct. So the tremors had to do with anxiety, and anxiety had to do with safety. The moment you provided a non-attacking safe environment, not only did he feel safe, actually he felt safe enough to allow the internalizing process to move ahead. And this internalizing process allowed him to internalize you, a good, reliable, stable object. And you are taken as a good, reliable, stable object because of the way you do therapy and because of the frame of the therapy. When we do technique, we will get into the frame of the therapy. And the frame of the therapy helps us to more easily become good, reliable, stable objects in the mind of the person. Unconscious, of course, you won't know consciously about it. So that internalization, which was arrested early life, that has been able to proceed.
So
And please.
can I have a question, if allowed? Yeah. So, did you find, madam, that he uh, was feeling safer when you were allowing him to be more feminine? Okay.
Yes,
Yeah. Fine.
yes.
Thank you.
All the magical thinking and all the kind of softness he wanted to bring forth, because his brother would always shut in between, what kind of man are you, or aise kaun hota hai. So that attacks were not there, so he felt way too safe, and rather it was seen as a, it's a neutral virtue of a person if you are kind and soft. So that helped him,
So,
I feel.
was it like in a way that you were allowing him to cross dress again?
No,
Not like that, no?
nowhere openly he wanted to cross dress or something. It
No, no,
was
no.
just
In
a,
his head, like, sorry, yeah.
yeah, I think in one of the sessions, if I can share that, sir,
Please.
where I had asked him to go for occult practitioner with some devi. I asked him, what if you embody her, how it would be. So the tremors increased, and then there was this lot of happiness on his face. His eyes were shut, and then he cried, and there was some shift happening there. And he said that, oh, I'm being blessed, but I know there was some kind of arousal of the fantasy of being a woman, which helped in a very divine way. That is how he said this was a very divine, graceful moment for me. Somewhere I felt, and after that, there was a lot of relief.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am.
So we have to look here into two parts of the homosexual component. Right? That, are we looking at natural femininity, or are we looking at a defensive femininity? Meaning, uh, are we looking at somebody who is with an orientation right from birth with excessive femininity, or are we looking at somebody who has been trained by the mother to be feminine, and now to be feminine is to please the mother? So then it will be just an expression of dependence in one more way, that you are dependent upon the mother, and to please the mother you do what the mother wants, and the mother wants you to be feminine. Number one. Number two, the process of pleasing the mother brings about an attack from the brother. Then what kind of a man are you? So this can be one track, that the acceptance of his being feminine gives him safety for the first time, and there is no brother to attack. So there is a relief from that safety, number one. Number two, deeper than the safety is, does he really want to be feminine, or is he pleasing the mother by being feminine? Now, if he pleases the mother by being feminine, then it's a defensive femininity. It's a defensive homosexuality, that if I don't please my mother, I will lose the mother. So I have to be a female to please the mother and not lose her. So then the homosexual orientation becomes secondary and the abandonment anxiety is primary. Second situation, that we are not looking at this kind of dynamic, but we are looking at inherently higher femininity, which the mother only added on to. That's a very different presentation. Now, in that sense, there we are not looking at a defensive femininity. We are looking at a natural femininity added to by the mother, and the natural femininity fortified by the fear of abandonment. So we can see two different tracks here. The femininity being secondary and abandonment anxiety being primary, or femininity being primary and the abandonment anxiety adding on to the femininity, while abandonment anxiety separately being an issue into itself. Yes, doctor.
Sir, it is just the other way of putting it, what you said, that defensive femininity is to reflect that there is fear of losing mother, fear of abandonment. But we can also say that there was secondary gain in showing the pleasing feminine behavior toward the mother, that he got more, perhaps, from her.
Correct. So the secondary gain has two parts. One part is that you gain the mother and there is a pleasure of the gain, the pleasure of the safety, the pleasure of being cared for, of love, of attention, all of that. And then there is a more primal fear of abandonment.
Yeah.
So there is something on the positive side and something avoided on the negative side. And now you can have femininity, the homosexual component, also out of Oedipus. So when we talk of defensive homosexuality, it can also be a way to avoid the Oedipal castration. That the moment I try to be a heterosexual, the Oedipus is activated and the castration anxiety is activated. And the only way out of it is to disown my masculinity. So I am no longer competing with the father. I no longer have a death wish for the father. So I turn the fear of father to the love of father by changing my orientation. And I get over the castration anxiety. So this will be like a defensive bisexuality or defensive homosexuality. One of the very differentiating things in that will be, in the homosexual couple or the bisexual couple, how does the person take the orientation? For example, let us say there is a person who is gay, but in that gay couple, he is the masculine person. Now, that is more likely to be a case of defensive homosexuality. Or in a lesbian couple, somebody becomes the woman. That is more likely a case of defensive homosexuality. So we were looking at the anxiety component, and we said there is anxiety springing forth from the Oedipus. There is anxiety which is springing forth from a pre-Oedipal early loss. So we see two these generating points of anxiety. First is very early life loss, and second is Oedipus. So one pre-Oedipal generator of anxiety and one Oedipal generator of anxiety. And the pre-Oedipal loss has also generated a mixed personality disorder. So the pre-Oedipal component of early life loss has generated dependent personality disorder, which is at the front. Below that can be histrionic personality disorder, and below that is fragile narcissistic personality disorder. Now, this constellation will give rise to a very fragile self. So disintegration will happen in the face of stress or attack. And this integration will again result in mounting anxiety. Now, this is till 5 years of age. Now, from 5 years of age till the adulthood, we see repeated attacks by the brother. So the fear of attack from the brother also is there, which is a long period of learning. So we can look at event-led generation of pathology and over a long period of time learning generation of pathology. So this is what we said, Oedipus is an event-led thing. Early life pre-Oedipal loss is an event-led thing. But then we can have over the time learning, which is another cause of pathology. And there we see the attacks by the brother, the domination by the brother, and in all probability, probably we might be looking at a narcissistic brother. So this narcissistic brother then trains him into dependence. Because as I always say, one successful narcissist will send 4 people to therapy, 2 from his home and 2 from his office. So they are our marketing people.
Let us take this patient to Kashi, where there will be celebration as well as mourning of the loss of masculinity, but at the same time survival, succeeding. There will be real emancipation.
Correct.
It really raises a point in my mind, and I believe this is my genuine belief and not a defensive belief, that suffering also helps you uh, progress into kind of spiritual achievement or liberation or progress along the path. That is
Correct. And that's how the Gita starts in the first chapter. That suffering and crisis often become the springboard of spiritual progress.
thank you.
And something allied to that is what we do in ISTDP, that we manufacture a crisis so that the rapid change can happen. Because this was an insight of Davanloo that change happens far more easily, deeply, and quickly when a crisis is there. And so if a crisis is not there, let us manufacture one. And that is manufactured in ISTDP in a very clever way. So we ask the person to sit on a chair, it's face-to-face therapy, not on the couch therapy. So the moment you sit on the chair, action is 0. You can't do action. So the human mind, the whole ground of human psyche has 3 core players: thought, feeling, and action. So they are the core 3 players in the playground of the human mind. So the moment you make somebody sit on the chair, action is 0. And then we ask the person to feel something. And if he thinks something, we say, let us put these thoughts aside and let us look only at the feelings. So if action is put to 0, the thoughts are put to 0, and only feelings are focused upon, an emotional crisis is generated. And in that state, we try to achieve transformation. So it is a state-led therapy approach. And this brings us to a bigger point, that there are some therapies which are state-dependent. They create a state and then attempt a change. And there are some therapies which don't create a state. they just proceed on their own normally. So if you look at ISTDP, it's a state-based therapy. You create a state, and within that state, then you apply your tools. Psychoanalysis also is a state-based thing. Our frame creates the state. The couch creates the state. Hypnotherapy is also a state-based thing. You first create a trance situation and then apply all your tools. Sorry, you're saying something.
I said, I was remembering something about Erhard seminar training, where you manufacture crisis, don't let the analyst to go out of the room also, apart from bare necessities. Don't let him sleep, and then uh, uh, and accuse him of the worst crimes. And then if your selection is right, then he emerges as a better equipped person. And
So,
if your selection is not right, you get a decompensated psychotic.
we have this is a very demanding technique, and this is for patient of category 4 that we talked about.
Mhm.
So we said category 1 who can take confrontation. So it is this category,
Mhm.
the category which can take confrontation. The
Yes.
second category who can take challenge, not necessarily, or interpretation, let us say.
Mhm.
Third, which just need holding and will be able to take interpretation much later. And step 4, who are not compatible with any form of psychoanalytic therapy.
So
So,
basically, check the ego strength and then we navigate further.
correct. And that can be done in two ways. One is by checking response to interpretation, or in extreme cases, just the sheer act of being on the couch is a test. Many people will just sit up and sit straight. They won't be able to lie down for a long time, which tells us that it is too much. The whole method is too much.
Too much.
So this is like who cannot endure the couch and the frame, who are not made for psychoanalytic psychotherapy. Better, more ego strength than them, those who want holding, and later will take interpretation. Better than them, those who can take interpretation, and the most healthy, most functional, who can take challenge and confrontation. So this has to be, the intervention is calibrated.
Yes, sir.
I just let me take an example of manufacturing the crisis. Like somebody has difficulty of accepting it, that I have a problem. So one of the ISTDP teacher, John, does it in a very interesting way. Just recollect it. His technique, his tools, his statements. I saw one of his videos and he says, the person comes and says, uh, so John says, tell me, how can I help you? What is the internal emotional problem I can help you with? This standard statement. He starts off the session with this. What is the internal emotional problem I can help you with? We won't go into analysis of why this is structured in this particular way. There's a lot of thinking behind it. We won't go into it. So the person says, my psychiatrist told me to see you. I told him I don't have any problem, but my family members and psychiatrist told me to see. So then John will say, if you don't have any problem, it's a wonderful place to be. But I wonder why you find yourself in my office if you don't have any problem. So he says something and then he says, okay, then what is it? Do you have a problem or you don't have a problem? Now a crisis is generated. Either he can fight and leave the office, or just sit there silently and waste the rest of the hour and then leave the office and not come back. Or he accepts, or he says that I have something but I can't accept. But a crisis forces him to take a position. He cannot be in a free for all and escape and use defenses of denial or defenses of diversion. So this can be one part of it. But coming back to our thing, so we have anxiety, a generalized anxiety disorder, which comes partly from Oedipus, partly from early loss, and partly from attacks of the brother. We have social anxiety, which is coming from early life object loss, leading to fragile narcissism, leading to social anxiety, and partly coming from dependence and social anxiety. Dependence also can lead to social anxiety, and fragile narcissism also can lead to social anxiety. And probably both can be at work in this situation. Then we come to erectile dysfunction. And erectile dysfunction can be because of unresolved Oedipus. And the unresolved Oedipus may be a standalone problem, or it may be colluding or connected to early life split. And this is slightly Kleinian, but Sudhir Kakkar has done a lot of work on it. And I saw only him addressing the terror of the sexual act leading to erectile dysfunction in a different way. So apart from Oedipus, he talks about difficult bad objects of the split deposited in the sexual parts or the body of the woman. Now this is something very deep and difficult to comprehend. So one, we will need recourse to the Kleinian idea of the split. We'll come to it later after we do Freud, but for the moment, I'll just make a mention of it. Yes.
I remember with that case, I had this very strong feeling. I don't know if feeling is the word for this, that ED was owing up to self castration, the guilt of not being enough to have the desire in itself of the Oedipal object, resigning from that desire, and then self harm is something to do with ED. It's a self castration, act of self castration.
So we will differentiate here psychoanalytically between asexuality and erectile dysfunction. Asexuality will be there is no desire, so the problem of erection does not arise. ED, when there is desire, but you cannot satisfy the desire because of the dysfunction. So if there is desire but there is dysfunction, then it can be because of the Oedipal fear or Oedipal guilt. That is, from the Oedipus it comes. It can be the Oedipal fear of the castration and death at the hands of the father, or the guilt of committing the Oedipal act, which is a taboo act, or the guilt of killing the father.
So, what if the tremors are the act itself, the Oedipal act,
Hmm.
and hence the ED, the guilt?
So then we will look at the tremors coming partly from early life loss, partly from Oedipus, and as we said, partly from the attack of the brother. But Oedipus also is one of the source of that anxiety, which is resulting in tremors. So what is happening is there is a pool of anxiety generated from these three sources. And part of that anxiety will go into tremors. And part of it might be going into something else, we don't know. Maybe he has an appetite issue. Maybe he has, say, sweaty palms, or maybe he has occasional vomiting, occasional diarrhea, occasional blurred vision. We don't know. But so far as we know, that the pool of anxiety is going into the tremors, and when he goes for the sexual act, it activates and leads to ED. So this is the way we look at generation and distribution of anxiety in a normal state and in the sexual performance stage. And the same thing is with social situation, that when the social performance comes, again that pool of anxiety is increased and a lot of anxiety goes to the social situation. And one of the things which is on an enduring basis is the fact of shame, that I should not have a psychological problem, I am okay with a biological problem. So if suffering is without shame, I am okay. Not okay, but I don't feel as discomforted as when suffering comes along with shame. And this shame is typically associated with fragile narcissism. It can also be with dependence. We can have both of it here, because both of them have this fear that actually I am not good enough. What I have put up as a good front is only an imposter. And people will see through the imposter and find out the real me. And then they will mock at me, they will humiliate me, they will shame me, and that will lead to unbearable humiliation and pain. And this algorithm going on in the unconscious makes social situations very uncomfortable.
So what was the second point you said? Fragile narcissism, and the second point leading to shame?
Dependence.
Dependent.
Because both will have the same anxiety that the front I have put up as the good front is actually an imposter. Really, I am something else, and that people will find out, and then they will mock at me, they will humiliate me, they will shame me. That will result in unbearable humiliation and pain. And this constant anxiety of that happening makes it very, very uncomfortable. It's one specific manifestation of I am not good enough.
Sorry. So Lacan would say that this would be tell me who I am, tell me what I desire, and he would put it in the discourse of the hysteric. So that's why repeated changing of doctors and not being happy until looking for a master, that kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah, I'm just telling you from my little knowledge. Yeah.
Correct. So
Yeah.
we would recast the same thing in different words, that there is a search for omnipotence. But the changing of doctors can be because of two things. One is just the search for omnipotence not coming true. That you go to a doctor with the expectation that he is omnipotent and he will cure, and the cure does not happen. So then you search omnipotence in somebody else. Or there can be omnipotence projection and envy together.
The attack on doctors of not taking the diagnosis the way it is.
So there will be 3-4 parts. One, you can have disappointment in projection of omnipotence.
Can it be a revenge to the omnipotent?
Yes, because when you have a narcissistic person projecting omnipotence, then there is a double thing going on. Right? He is seeking omnipotence. On the other hand, he can't take that anybody else can be omnipotent but him. So then he won't allow you to succeed. Because if
It's
you
very much evident here.
if you succeed as a healer, where he has not succeeded, then you are better than him. And then he is not omnipotent, and that is terrible for him.
Also, there was a constant theme of him sharing that every time all the doctors mocked him about his issues, that, why you think you don't have psychological. So that non-acceptance of his opinion and view also, pushed him to seek a revenge by having something which is incurable and mystical in nature, out of the regular league of issues.
So this is a typical therapy difficulty. So what happens here is he has a psychological problem. He uses the defense of denial. And when people confront the defense, what happens is your attack on the defense becomes an attack on the person. And this is a very dangerous situation in therapy. That confrontation with the defense becomes a confrontation with the person. And that's a recipe for losing the patient. So this is a very important thing, that when people are strongly identified with their defenses, how to deal with it. And one way to deal with it is not to confront, but to go into the reasoning of why it is so necessary. Why has the person to identify so strongly with the defense? What purpose is it serving him? because there is some rationale inside for holding on. So that is a very tricky situation, that you are trying to fight the pathology and turns into a fight with the person. Yeah.
This is further proven by while I had allowed him to go for his medical shopping again and again. Meanwhile, we were doing the work. There was a part when I had suggested him that if he thinks it is Parkinson's, let's take assistance from occupational therapist. He went there. He said, "No, you do occupational therapy to me." I said, "How can I do? I'm not trained." He said, "I will provide you everything you do course, but only you can do it to me." And the results were there with me being a very layman in occupational therapy. But some of the techniques, he said, because the way people were dealing was the problem. The attack of, he's denying, and then there is no one who's containing that.
Correct.
So
We have here a patient who needs holding and containment the most, because he never had holding from an authority figure. And that's very important. Often we can have selective holding from the mother, but not from an authority figure. And that's very important, to have holding from an authority figure, because that changes our fundamental perception of authority figures. That they need not always be threatening, dominating, and attacking. You can have safe and gentle authority figures. Encouraging authority figures, not criticizing or cold authority figures. That's very, very important. So, should we pause for a cup of tea?
Happy.
Okay. So I pause the recording, we'll start again. So we can have one recording for the case. So what we see here is, above the surface, we have this generalized anxiety disorder, social anxiety disorder, erectile dysfunction, conversion disorder, and subterranean, we have dependent personality disorder, histrionic personality disorder, and narcissistic personality disorder, analytically speaking. And DSM wise, if you speak, then in disorder, you put only the dependent. You don't put the other two. So now, when we are looking at this whole tree of pathology, the whole tree of trauma, then the roots are in the first event of loss, which is very pre-Oedipal. And therefore, for this case, we will need Freudian theory, we will need Kleinian theory, we will need Kohutian theory. Three theories will go into analysis of this case and even in therapy. So this is how cases come which require more than one schools. That for the Oedipal component, we require Freud. For the pre-Oedipal early life loss and abandonment, we require Klein. And for this, the fear of constant attack and the need for safety and holding, we require Kohut. So we require three of them here. And Bhavna has combined all the three of them very well. In therapy also and in analysis also. So let us draw the line. So we see a line of pathology development like this, that you have early life loss leading to dependence, histrionicity, narcissism, and a split open. This is the outcome of the early life loss. Now with this loss, the person goes into Oedipus. So already there is a predisposition not to resolve the Oedipus completely. Because of the split, the projections will be too strong, both positive and negative. So now when you project the positive omnipotence on the father and the mother, the positive omnipotence on the mother makes it practically impossible to let go. and the negative omnipotence of the father multiplies the castration anxiety manifold. So you're already coming with the split open and the readiness to project omnipotence, both good and bad in the extreme, on people and entering into the Oedipus. So because the Klein is not resolved, the chances of Freud getting resolved are very low. And then you have over the time learning of attacks, humiliation, dismissal from the brother, which fortifies all that was there from 0 to 5 years of age and does not allow the healing of any of it. And this is what is very important, that post 5 years of age, what is the experience? Is the experience healing what took place from 0 to 5, or is it multiplying the pathology? That over the long period of time, the experience of you as a child and as an adult, is it healing the childhood pathology or making it worse? And in most cases which come to us, it makes it worse. A very important point here is, at what point should we see the loss? Can we make a rough estimate of when the loss would have happened? Because related to loss, there are three important points. One, when did it happen? Two, how deep it was? And three, has it happened once or has it been reinforced by repetition? And fourth, which is very important, is what was the experience before the loss? And fifth, what is the experience after the loss? Now, this from the case, if we try to deduce, what can we deduce? Number one, the loss was not very early. So here we are, we know there has been a loss, but we want to deduce how the nature of the loss, how early, how deep, how enduring, how repeating it was, what preceded it, what followed it. So now we are going into the story of the loss. And certain markers tell us. Case history also can tell us certain things. For example, if there is an informant, somebody can tell us that the mother was away when he was 6 months of age or 7 months of age for a period of a week or 2 weeks or whatever it is. Or the mother started working because she was a working mother after 3 months of pregnancy leave or 6 months of pregnancy leave. So we can have the when we can figure out, but the other parts are difficult to get from information. They have to be inferred using analysis, the theory of analysis.
I forgot to mention in the case history, he was breastfed for 4 years.
Delayed weaning. Sir, forgive me for interposing, if at all. Should we be also making a list of positive points when we see a case so that we also understand what let him survive so far, on which he will stand further ahead?
Yes, very much so. And that is a difficulty of psychoanalysis.
Yeah.
That we are obsessed with the negative.
Thank you.
Don't adequately give importance to the positive, rightly as you said, because healing will mean two things. One is reduction of negative and increase in the positive. And all our theories are based upon reduction of the negative. And we expect that once the negative is removed, the natural development cycle will take over. But we can aid that with positive theorizing. And one aspect in that is something which is called positive psychology, which is coming up very rapidly, which goes into precisely this aspect, that not only in the area of conflict, but even in the area of conflict-free functioning of the human being, can we increase, say, for example, the way we get the pleasure of the food, or the way we get the pleasure of wearing good clothes, or the pleasure of a morning walk, can we do something to increase those pleasures?
That is primary autonomy, na, sir? Conflict-free functioning.
Correct. Correct.
Thank you.
So there are people who are working on this part of we are essentially coming from -5 to +2, and they take over and they want to take from +2 to +8. So a general word about loss. Yeah.
My teacher would tell me, Vasudev, our job is safe landing of flights in distress. But now he was the one who influenced me with Freud and all. But thereafter we have gone ahead and now we also motivate our clients to take off again,
Correct.
prepare them to take off again. So I thought, sorry for the distraction.
Maybe it's
Yeah.
very important. बहुत ही अच्छा था intervention. It's a very good metaphor.
Yeah.
So if we can avoid crash landing, that's half the job done.
Yeah.
A general word about loss, and then we come back to this case. If very early loss takes place without having internalized good, reliable, stable object even to a minimum, then we have very difficult situations of psychosis. Very, very difficult situations. That does not mean it cannot happen in any other way, but this is one way it can happen. The second is if there has been not adequate, but there has been substantial internalization of a good, reliable, stable object or goodness inside. And then on that, some goodness is developed inside the mind, and then the loss takes place. More likely are the personality disorders. And within that, earlier the loss takes place, more likely is the borderline personality disorder. After that, usually it is dependence, and after that it is narcissism. And the earlier the loss takes place, more is the tendency to somatization. And therefore the autoimmune. Usually the somatization is in the form of autoimmune. In other forms also, like you can see convulsions. What used to be called in earlier days hysterical epilepsy. So the fragility comes from an early loss. So we see in this case, so the moment we look at the nature of the disorder, we look at fragility and we look at somatization, it gives us a rough idea of the nature of loss. That when it would have taken place, how deeply it would have taken place, and what would have been preceding and succeeding it. So what do we think about this? That we are in a situation where on one hand, the breastfeeding has been quite long. On the other hand, we are seeing the outcomes of a loss. Now, there are two ways of looking at it. One, the loss we are talking of is actually at 4 years. And that is the loss of the breast, the loss of the mother, and the Oedipal loss practically at the same time. Usually, there is a gap. When we talk of early life loss, it's actually pre-Oedipal by and large. So one way to look at it is we are looking at a loss combined of the breast of the mother and of the breast of the pre-Oedipal mother and the Oedipal mother.
So loss of breast at 4, that is to do somewhere in the anal stage, can lead to this underlying unconscious bisexuality.
Uh,
It's a compensation to the loss of breast, to the pleasure gained in the anal phase.
yeah, 4 will practically be Oedipal entry.
Oedipal only?
Practically Oedipal entry. But what we can look at is one way of looking at the femininity in men, very, very early life roots, if we look into, is to compensate for the loss of the mother.
Hmm.
That I become the female,
Internalize the mother.
I become the female to deny the loss of the mother.
And what if the mother is not good enough mother? So
That,
I also become not so good enough.
yeah, that can be one. Or in compensation, somebody can try to be an ideal,
Hmm.
because that will take us into that when the loss happens, how is the person trying to compensate the loss? Is it trying to compensate the loss by the lost object or by replacing it with an ideal object? So we have both the fantasies of the people as they were and people we had idealized they should have been, but they were not.
But won't the narcissism attack not so good enough object internalized? It will take it because if something is better than nothing, it will compensate for it, but it will never. That's henceforth the search for omnipotence is always there.
Correct. And that will create a secret anger against oneself.
Against oneself, a lot of guilt and anger both.
So there, the proportion of dependence and narcissism will play out. Because the difference in the two is the narcissist usually thinks of himself as omnipotent till he meets somebody who is so placed that reality just does not allow that defense to work. And he has to accept that he is more omnipotent than himself and then live out his omnipotence by identification. But if reality is not pressurizing, the narcissist would like to be the omnipotent. So one way of looking at early life difficulty of this person is that all of it happened together at 4. That the pre-Oedipal happened at 4 and it just entered Oedipus and then the Oedipal thing happened very near to each other. Second way to look at it would be that we probably don't have that data, but for some time the mother was not available in the first 3 years or first 2 years. And looking at the way the split is open and the way the tremors are happening, we can probably, if you want to place the loss, this loss looks like something which has happened after the first year, probably after 1.5 years to between 18 months to 24 months. That is the period in which roughly this loss looks like given the outcomes. Yeah, you're saying something.
Yes, you're right. I'm reminded the mother was in extreme depression
Correct.
when he was born. It was postpartum depression and then it continued forever till she was alive.
Correct. Correct. So here we have a very different thing. So if the mother was not available, let us say, right, that was the nature of the loss, then the presentation tells us it should roughly be between 1.5 to 2 years. But there is an alternative to it, what you suggested, that the mother was always present but emotionally depressed. Yeah.
Qualitative maternal deprivation
Correct.
would lead to perhaps multiple mothering and then the consequences in personality and then
Correct.
Winnicott not good enough mother. And
Correct. Winnicott tells about good enough mothering and he does not have good enough mothering. And if you go into details of it, why do we call it not good enough mothering? What are the details of it? Then if you deconstruct good enough, not good enough mothering, then we are led to the depressed mother. And that's a different kind of a loss that the person experiences. Right? That you have a physically present mother, but a depressed mother. Second, you can have a physically present mother, but a cold mother.
which mother?
Cold, cold.
Cold.
Not warm. What we call the refrigerator mother.
Yeah.
And the third would be the present mother, but the attacking mother, where the problems are not of loss, but of attack. Now, Attack, let us keep for the moment aside, but just focusing on the loss, we see here a present depressed mother. So when you have a present depressed mother, what is internalized is sadness, and if the mother is very, very depressed, then deadness. Deadness. So this sadness and deadness, which is internalized, lead to very different things. Like sadness internalized can lead to the manic feeling of the histrionic, but the deadness internalized can easily lead to the manic feeling of the bipolar. Bipolar 1 I am referring to, not 2. That the only way to escape that deadness is to have a very strong mania by using strong defenses of reaction formation. So there is a video on our channel, Sadness and Deadness, that how the two are different. And this brings up to the whole point of internalization, which we'll take up later when we do Klein. But just to make a mention of it, that there is a mechanism in the psyche, which there are two mechanisms, the attachment mechanism and the internalizing mechanism. That wherever we are, whatever is around us, generally we get attached over time, even if it is just the rooms, the walls of the room. That if you live in the room for 12 years and you have to vacate the room, you feel sad about it. So you get attached to anything in front of you because there is like a radar inside which is throwing the waves of attachment outside continuously. So this is one mechanism of attachment always on. And second, in the childhood, similarly, a reverse mechanism of internalization is on. So whatever is in front of you, you internalize. You have a healthy, warm, vivacious, bouncing mother, you internalize that. You have a sad mother, you internalize that. You have an attacking mother, you internalize that. And then once it is internalized, even when physically the person is not present, the internalized things go on. So even in the therapy room, the attacking person is not there. The patient feels he is there and he can't feel anger against him out of fear of more attack. So psychologically, the person is always present, even though physically absent, because of the internalization. So here we see internalization of a sad mother. Right? Now, we don't know it was a dead mother, but sad definitely, yes.
I did not understand manic of histrionic.
Yes.
Many of histrionic.
So deadness is a more stronger form of sadness.
Yeah, that is understood. But many of histrionicity, I have not come across perhaps.
Correct. So the deadness, if it has been internalized in early life. Now, you can have a bipolar person with internalized sadness, right? And the sadness inside is not only internalized early life, but also in events a person has accumulated over a long period of time. So generally you will see bipolar where you look at early life loss or attack, early life crisis, very sensitive person, and somebody in the atmosphere is extremely unpredictable and attacking. But the person has good experience before the first loss happened. If the person does not have adequately good experience, then he will shift from bipolar to borderline. Because the borderline is more fragile than the bipolar. So in fact, Kohut puts a continuum in terms of ego strength. He calls it ego cohesiveness or self-strength or healthy self. And the continuum is psychosis, borderline, and narcissism. He does not go into other personality disorders, but his idea is that fragility-wise, propensity to disintegrate-wise, psychosis is the highest, borderline is second, and other personality disorders are the third. So what happens is, let us say sadness is internalized, and you start getting absorbed by that sadness and you want to get out of it. The defense uses reaction formation, and the way to defend against sadness is to go into extreme happiness, which is mania. But the intensity of mania will in some way correspond to the sadness it is defending against. So if sadness is internalized and it is not very, very deep, you will actually have a lighter manic cycle. So more likely you will be in bipolar 2. But if you are dealing with avoiding deadness, which is a very acute form, very condensed form, then the corresponding manic jump also has to be very, very strong. So then you will be looking more at bipolar 1. That either it is very deep sadness or deadness. And the second way to escape deadness in case of bipolar will be masochism. Because the pain helps you feel alive for a moment. The spark, that pulse of pain makes you feel alive for a moment. So the pain is used as a tool for aliveness to escape the deadness inside, which is very different from masochism used by an anxious person who is using that to avoid the fragmentation anxiety. Because he is looking for a consolidating center, and the pain, the movement of pain in a way is a consolidating movement. It's a centripetal movement. Contrast to the movement of happiness, which is a centrifugal movement. So the pain can be used as a defense. The masochism can be used as a defense by somebody against fragmentation anxiety, by somebody against internalized deadness. So then now if we draw the line, we have the line like this. Early life, you have emotional loss of the mother. You have a depressed mother. You internalize sadness and partly maybe deadness. We don't, but at least sadness. And you feel the mother, who was alive probably for a few days, entering into a postpartum and not getting out of it. So that is the pre-Oedipal event of the loss of the joyful mother to a depressed mother. So there is a loss of the good mother and the advent of a half good mother. That is the pre-Oedipal problem. Now with this, you have the split open, the personality disorders, and then you go into the Oedipus. And in the
Loss of joyful mother to
a half good mother.
half good mother.
Who is present but depressed. Physically present, emotionally not available. And then you enter into the Oedipus with the split open, and then the projections happen on the mother and on the father. Now the mother cannot be given up and the father cannot be defeated or tolerated. The attacks of the father in fantasy are too brutal. Now that leads to the non-closure of the Oedipus, and then you go into the normal life and there are attacks of the brother which fortify the attacks of the father in the Oedipus. And then probably nothing happens to console him and heal his fear of abandonment and loss again. And I am not good enough starts from that early loss. So then the anxiety which is coming from early loss, the inferiority coming from early loss, the dependence, narcissism, histrionicity coming from early loss, couples with the anxiety and the guilt of Oedipus, and couples with the fear of the brother, as also the anger towards the brother. So one of the things we have not talked about is the anger towards the brother. And then there would also be sadness of the absent father and anger towards the absent father. And this, all of these effects go into different manifestations. Anxiety, the anxiety from the four sources, the first source, loss, Oedipus, attack of the brother, and maybe signal anxiety of rage towards the brother and the father, right? And rage towards the mother, the anxiety of that goes into the generalized anxiety disorder. Part of it couples with early life, I am not good enough, creates social anxiety disorder. Oedipus and early life bad objects coming to attack, coupled with I am not good enough, coupled with castration by the brother going to erectile dysfunction. And the need for maintaining I am good enough, the narcissistic high goes into rejection of any psychological disorder, because the narcissism will not allow any disorder to be recognized, because that is an attack on narcissism. And that would lead to non-compliance with the psychiatrist, confrontation with the psychiatrist, confrontation with anybody who uses labels. And that all of this put together calls for healing of the earlier layer of disorders, personality disorders and early loss first, and then come into the erectile dysfunction. And that Bhavna has done very well by taking a holding stance and allowing him to internalize good, reliable, stable object and experience a safe and encouraging and positive authority figure. That has produced good healing. So this is how one can analyze this in terms of therapy. One starts with Kohutian of holding, and then one goes into Kleinian and lastly Freudian. But the Kleinian has to be permeated by spirit of Kohut, not the harsh Kleinian thing that many Kleinians do. It's very gentle. And here, if you know less of Klein, it helps.
Survival. Good, reliable, stable object.
Yeah, that's what we want to internalize.
And what else did you say?
Very positive, safe, gentle, and encouraging authority figure. Because all other authority figures either have been absent or attacking. So in a way, one can also see the abandonment of the father. And the rage towards that abandonment is expressed by omission. That he is nowhere to be seen in the case history, right? What I call annihilation by absolute omission. And one of the tricks that one of my teachers used to say is, who is absent from the case history? And what is the story of that absence?
And then we take them to empty chair.
Correct. Correct. He needs actually a filled chair. Much later, he has to go to an empty chair. So like, this is a situation where one is looking for good, safe attachments and much later interpretation. So it's like, philosophically speaking, if you look at Sartre and Kohut, one of my talks is on this, they have very different idea of the other.
Sartre.
Kohut, hence Kohut. Sartre says the other is the hell. Right? And the Kohut says the other is the sunshine. They're exactly opposite ideas about the other. And for many people come to therapy, the other is the sunshine is more true. And for a minority, the other is the hell. Like in all the loss cases, the other is the sunshine. And attack cases, the other is the hell. So we are nearing the analysis. Yeah.
Process thinking is going on and on in two minds whether to.
Please go on. Please express, don't hold back.
It is somewhat, not exactly, similar to Shunyavad versus Tattvamasi and Krishna playing around. And so Sartre is like nothing,
Correct.
being and nothingness.
Correct. So
And
this takes us to the spiritual discourse. I think one discussion I had with Bhavna, the path of yes and the path of no. So if you go too deep on the Sartre line, you will go to the path of no. Right? Like the path of Buddha, Mahavir, Zen masters, it's a path of no, where you are not trying to engage with the world and fight out the battles.
path of no, N-O.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then you have the path of yes, where you will have Krishna, Swami Vivekananda, Guru Gobind Singh, who will engage with the world. And the differentiating fact is, the point concept is the significance of the temporal. Like, if you believe that the temporal is significant, then you are doing something in the world matters. But if you don't believe in significance of the temporal and you stretch the timeline too big, okay, ultimately the Milky Way is going to be dissolved someday. What is the point of anything? Right? So if you stretch the timeline too big, then the temporal becomes insignificant. And when the temporal becomes insignificant, then the path of no appears more logical. But when there is significance of the temporal, then the path of yes becomes more logical. And partly it depends on your own fate and your own constitution, which path appeals to you more.
Enriching. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bhavna, for making the time, running around and still presenting the case.
Thank you for the learning opportunity, all of you all.
I should be thanking you for doing good therapy.
She was speaking for us, learning opportunity for me. Amen.
So
I'm
one
going to
point
speak
before,
for him.
so one point before we stop for the day is uh, how it is like how the arena of analysis opens up, and we just go on and on. And this is like a dream, that the dream may be of 5 minutes. When you put it on paper, it's a half a page or 1 page, but you can take hours and hours to analyze it using various schools, using various concepts, and how it takes time. I thought of two cases today, but we could do only one. So there is a time it requires. Right. So today our discussion basically was focused on case analysis, not on how to do therapy. In technique, we will go into how to do therapy. Like how do you open a session? How do you close a session? Next time when you come for the session, do you make a reference to the previous session or you don't make a reference? If the client does not come on time, do you call him? If he does not pay, when do you call him? If he comes late, do you take it into analysis or not? And when do you start interpretation? Till when do you hold? Is silence an interpretation? This kind of ideas we'll go into. So thank you again, Bhavna, on behalf of everybody.
What I remember is, imagine, let me tell you a joke. Am I allowed to tell you a joke?
Yeah, do free association, feel free.
Very chess grandmaster who is going to a tournament,
Going
and he
on?
gets chess grandmaster
Uh,
gets stuck on a very small station, railway station in the in UK, and there was only one shanty where they served coffee. No electricity, no light, nothing. He goes inside, finds people playing chess. So he gets surprised. He watches. They look at him, they tolerate him for time, and then they say, "You want to play?" He says, "Yes." And then he plays, and he loses to an educated farmer there. And he says, "Oh, you played extremely well." Farmer says, "You also played very well." So he says, "But you did not make use of any use of the rooks." He said, "Oh, you mean those two blocks at the two ends? We don't know what use they are." rural person still defeats him,
Correct.
who doesn't know what is the use of rooks.
Correct.
So patients many times are like the rural people, and we take ourselves to be grandmasters. Like in general practice, I'm speaking. I'm not speaking
Correct. Correct.
with experts like you, but this is what happens,
Oh no, I am no expert by any chance.
and that is how we keep on accumulating, learning, and that. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you so much. Next Monday we meet. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.